when I was in my 30s, my hair was blonde. My dad's was white. And I'm going like, one day I looked in the mirror, I'm like, man, when did that hair turn white? And I'm going like, I have no, and that, you see a picture here and you're looking for some indication. Now, how did that happen? So things happen in terms of life, and these seasons are a lot like that they're slow, they're gradual, and they're cumulative. But they are unique, okay? So I'm going to be talking about some of the uniqueness of the different seasons. Let's talk about the first one. And again, this may not apply to you individually. It's kind of a generic, broad sweep, if you will. But you might find it does apply to others, or it might apply to you. My observation is not just for myself, but when I see folks who have so much productivity and so much of life still at age 68 or 73, I'm like, why aren't you working? I don't know. Well, they've lost the idea, well, how do I do that? Or I'm told, if somebody comes up to me and says, you're supposed to, the first thing it says, get out of my life. You don't tell me what I'm supposed to. Okay? I need to think about it, pray about it, talk with my best counselor, which is my wife, who's right there, and go from there. The first season, 65 to 75. Medicare said you're in that first season. I'm in that first season. Here's the deal. It's a working season. Now, what I mean by working is going to change from what you might be thinking, so hang with me. But here's the deal. A lot of times people who are retired are not done thinking. They're not done creating. They're not done contributing. Mentally, they've got a lot more to give. Emotionally, I know when I retired from the Air Force in 2003, I was fortunate actually because I chose to retire to go do some other things. And then a few years later, the Surgeon General was willing, he's a friend, was willing to bring me back on as reservist because I was not emotionally done with the military because I just tremendously love it. So I was able to actually, I retired twice, once from active duty and then once from reserves. But emotionally was what drove that. I'm like, I just want to give more. 9/11 does something to somebody. You're not the same after that. You realize this little world of ours is not so friendly toward us, and we have to defend it. So emotionally, physically, a lot of people who are in this age group are physically able to do a lot. Okay, in some cases even more than what they used to do because they're not sitting on their tail all the time, and they can actually go and exercise on a regular basis or go for walks. And then financially, a person from 65 to 75 say, I don't have enough money. I don't think I've done as well as I need to if I'm going to live longer than my mom or dad who died at 72 or 75. If I'm going to live until 95 or 100 or 105, I've got to think differently than if I'm going to live to be 70, 75. Does that make sense? So in reality, I'm not looking to stop earning income at some point. I'm simply saying there's a different season. So for those who are 65 to 75, and even those older than that, again, keep in mind that it doesn't define you. It's a generic category. You may find that in these categories, these columns, that you're there, that you may not have enough money and you need to work. We were last night at Lowe's talking to a retired gentleman. He was delightful, and he enjoyed his work. And he's going like, I don't have to worry about stuff. I just get to come and have fun working. And so be thinking about that if this fits you from 65 to 75. Here's the law. They cannot ask you your name or your age for your employment. That's against the law. Okay, well, because a lot of seems going, they won't hire me because I'm too old. Well, they don't have to know how old you are. It's against the law. Okay? If you can do the job, that is all the law requires. And consequently, that's discrimination. And oh, by the way, the funny part of this was age 40. Think about that. That back then, people 45, 50, 55 were being kicked out of the job market, and they're going like, what's this about? And so the federal law says if you're above age 40, nobody can disqualify you if you can do the job for employment compared to a younger person type of thing. That's important. It's a working season. Purpose to get out of bed, keeping the mind active, passion-centered, and financial security. I'm still in a working season. I still need to get out of bed. I still need to provide for my family. I still need to be having passion to do what I should be doing. Okay, so I'm still in a working season. Now, hang with me because we're going to compare this to the other 2 seasons, okay? And you'll see the transition as we go through those. But a working season of life is you got things to do. You got to get going. Now, how you define the word work is really up to you. There's a gentleman I was with at Snap Fitness, and he would come in. He's a senior kind of guy. I says, so you're here every day? He says, yeah, it's my work. I've made being physically active and fit my work. I do it every day. I do not let my feelings keep me in bed. Now, he defined work for him as maintaining his health on a regular basis that he was committed to. And I thought that was brilliant because it didn't mean he had to go out and work at Walmart or a store or something like that. He just had to have something he was committed to regardless of how he felt. And what's the value of that? If every time a person, we've got children and grandchildren, and when I hear this, I don't feel like it stuff, I cringe. I'm going, "Grr." Because then we're like, you don't build your life on how you feel, because today you're here doing something, and then tomorrow you're gone off with a wisp thing. You know, you do it because you make a commitment, and you're going like, here's the benefit of this commitment, and I'm going to stay with it. And so in that working concept, I just want you to understand that you have to have a purpose to get out of bed. Something that says to your brain, you need to learn something new in order to create something. And to have a passion. Therefore, in my opinion, Tom McKnight, getting old, the concept, the phrase, is really between everybody's ears. I have more and more people younger than me telling me I'm getting old. And I'm going like, no, you're decaying rather rapidly, actually. You know, you're not getting older than me because we both age at the same rate. But you can decay rather quickly with the way you think about things. And then they're going like, yeah, well, you're just an old man, you don't know anything. And I'm like, I know it, you're right. And actually the concept of the decay, this is a neurologist, that when I was studying the tapes, and I'll show you the tapes later on, he said people decay and people age. You can't stop aging, but we all decay at a certain rate. So what is work? Work is basically a habit. A habit is not, I feel like it. A habit is not, I'm passionate about it. A habit is, I've decided this is what I'm going to do, and here's why I do it. And I do it, period. And that's a good thing, regardless of how you fill in the blank. See, you can be at a stage of life financially where you're going like, you know, I'm free to do what I want to do. Fine, but do you have habits? Do you have things that you're committed to that you do it, period, because you've said you'll do it? And you stay the course, and there's a reason for that. Not always defined by the task. So as you can see there, it's not about employment that I'm talking. It's about doing something regardless of how I feel and having a commitment to it and seeing that there's a purpose behind it. Sometimes we have to reinvent ourselves. There are some people who are high-ranking folks at one moment, and the next moment they're in a classroom with kids. Now, I think that's crazy. Okay, I would never do that. But I do know some people who've done that, and I admire that. I do know people who, like George Bush, Portraits of Courage. After he retired from being president, he took up painting. And he had actually 3 different special teachers teach him how to paint. A consequence of that, if you get his book, Portraits of Courage, he's taken 96 active duty, or former active duty, men and women, all races, and has actually tried to capture their courage, because all of them were disabled in one way or another from combat. And so he's actually created a memorial to the men and women. But he learned that after his presidency. And whether you like his artwork or not, he took it seriously. And when he went to certain levels of learning art skill, then they said, I can't teach you anymore. I've taught you what I can tell. And finally, he's become his own artist. And so it's a great book. And then one of my heroes is, what's her name? Oh yeah, it's my wife. Because here's what she did. She sacrificed for many decades for me to advance in schooling, for the military career thing, to raise 4 kids, 2 natural, 2 adopted. And then one day she's going like, you know, it's time for me to go back to school and finish college. And she didn't stop there. She went on to finish her master's at 64. And I'm going like, your children and grandchildren will always honor and respect the fact that you did that. Now, it was a challenge for her and her family, like me, highly dependent on her. But I was so admiring. At 12 o'clock at night, I was in bed. She was not. Okay? And that's, the point of all that is simply this, that we don't want to become, I'm getting old phrase, is between our ears. And in her senior year, she was working for a goal that she wanted to accomplish. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say. From 65 to 75, you can still do more than what you think you can do, if you think you can do it. And then, decide to work, mental adjustment. Prepare to work, new skills. Enjoy work, follow your passion. You know, that's kind of this season that we're going into for the next 10 years, is to be fulfilling those type of directions. The good news is, I have to have more time to pace myself. I need more recovery. In private practice, it's a 12 to 14 hour workday every day. The only way I could compensate for that is to go to bed earlier as the days wear on, because exhaustion sets in. You have to recover. So those folks who are in this season get to do that. We get to actually realize that nothing is forever, that there's going to be another season in life. And then the final thing I mentioned up there is preparing for it. Someday, God willing, I'll be 75, 85, 95. And I'm preparing today for what that might be, okay? So, for those of us in this season, do you still need to work? And how would you define that? And what are the ground rules that you're going to follow to implement that process? But work to me is a habit. It's no matter how I feel, I got to do it. I've been doing something called boot camp, which is pure torture, for a year and a half. And it's work for me. And I got to do it. And I don't like it. But I do it. Because I know the downside, or the other side, is the benefit of it. Does that make sense?